Started. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय राधिकायै प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायण गोस्वामिनिति नामिने। श्री कृष्ण लीला कथने सुदक्षम औदार्य माधुर्य गुणैशयुक्तम वरम वरेण्यम पुरुषम महांतम श्रीनारायणं त्वं शिरसा नमामि। त्रिदंडिनां भक्तशिरोमणिं च श्रीकृष्णपादाब्जधृतये हृदि चैतन्यलीलामृतसारसारम् नारायणं त्वं सततं प्रपद्ये। नमो वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्याय नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे तन्नय माम चरणन्तिके। भक्त्या विहीनापराधलक्षै क्षिप्ताश्च कामादितरङ्गमध्यै कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृंदे नमस्ते चरणारविंदम। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So first of all, I offer my unlimited obeisances unto the divine lotus feet of my most worshipable spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. My unlimited obeisances unto the divine lotus feet of Sachidanand Thakur Srila Bhaktivinod, by whose causeless mercy we have received this transcendental scripture called Jaiva Dharma, and my respects to all the devotees who are assembled here today. So we will continue chapter 5 of Jaiva Dharma, which is titled that Vaidhi Bhakti is also eternal. So last time we read that Devi Das, who is the youngest son of Lahari Mahashay, he had come to Godrum to take him back to Shantipur, as everyone was criticizing that even though he was from a such high class Brahmin family, he has adopted the Vaishnav religion and was now dressing up as the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And when he came, he started asking some questions and felt that what his father was doing had some scriptural basis, and that he was not just doing this emotionally. So his interest increased further. And then his father took him to Vaishnav Dasji and said that if you are more inquisitive, inquire from him, that he is my spiritual master. Then they had many points they discussed. And in the end, very impressed by the scholarly answers of Vaishnav Das ji, Devi Das asked him that if he would explain Vedanta to him. And at that time, Vaishnav Das ji said that even though I have read and I have taught Vedanta, but now I understand that it is the explanation of Sri Shankaracharya called Sharirik Bhashya is not the true understanding of Vedanta. And therefore, I do not now spend time reading or explaining it. But if you are interested, I can explain to you what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, which was the notes were taken by Gopinath Acharya, and then it was written in the form of a book by Kavi Karnapun. So Devidas ji said, I will try to get a copy. And then he went back to his father and narrated the discussion. So that time, his father told him, he was very delighted to hear that his son had such wonderful discussion with his spiritual master, Vaishnav Das ji. And then he said, Devi, you have acquired a great deal of education, but now you can try to attain the highest destination. So it's telling him a very, very important, giving him an important instruction. He says, so much time of your life you have spent in trying to understand Nyaya Shastra, Smarta Shastra, but you have still not understood the essence of what these scriptures are saying or what the Vedas are saying. So now, he says the word, now you can try. Now you have a great opportunity. The Vedanta Sutras, as you know, also start from this word, Athato Brahm Jigyasa. Now that you have this human life, do not waste it. We have had so many lives since time immemorial. We have been transmigrating from one body to another body. And we have spent all those lives in sense gratification or in trying to follow many, many other different types of faiths and religions. But now in this human life, that especially that we have taken birth at a time which is only about 500 years from the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we have this great rare opportunity, because this is the golden age, very rare opportunity to understand the highest, the epitome of what spiritual life is, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give. So he says, now you have the opportunity to attain not just liberation, but the highest destination, Unnat Ujjwal Ras, that Mahaprabhu came to give. So he says this is the ultimate benefit for all living beings. So this is where we stopped last time. Then we will continue. So hearing this, Devidas, he submitted to his father that the real reason that I had come here was not really for this discussion. Now, of course, he was developing some interest in it, but he had actually come to take his father back. And he said, please come back with us, because specifically, mother, she wants to have darshan of your lotus feet. Now, when Lahari Mahasaya heard this, he said that I am not interested in going back to that home. Why? The reason he gave is that I will not enter any house that is opposed to bhakti. So here again, he is giving a very important instruction. So going to the house was not the problem, but going to the house where everyone was opposed to bhakti was the problem. These among the six aspects of surrender, Sharanagati, the first is Anukulasya Sankalpaha Pratikulasya Varjanam, that we should accept that which is favorable to bhakti, and we should reject everything that is against the cultivation of bhakti. So associating with those who are opposed to the Lord, who are opposed to the Vaishnav Siddhant, is not very favorable to bhakti. Now, there is an important understanding here, because many times we also face situations where people in the family or in a friend circle, they may be opposed to what we are doing. Now, their opposition could be because of two reasons. The opposition could be because they just don't know, right? They have heard things, they have misconceptions, misunderstandings, and because, or they have some fear, especially if some family member starts becoming more interested in bhakti, then the family members, they become a bit scared. What if he becomes completely renounced? but they are not necessarily jealous of it. They are not necessarily opposed to it. It is only out of their ignorance they are opposing. So, in those cases, one should try to be patient and being in a compassionate way, just like we discussed last time, should try to help their family members slowly and gradually understand by trying to become a better human being, by trying to show them that how following the devotional principles, his life has become much better and he has become a more loving and a compassionate person. But in cases where they are vehemently opposed, they know what you're doing is right. They also understand or have read the scriptures, but they're so opposed to the worship of the Lord in his form. So they may be Brahmvadis or Karamkandis, which was the case here. They were Brahmins. They knew what the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were. Advaitacharya had appeared in Shantipur, but still they were very opposed to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So he said, in this case, this was not very favorable to go to such a house. So he said, first, you should become Vaishnavas, and then you can take me home. So when Devidas heard this, he was a bit disturbed. He said, how can you say that we are not Vaishnavas? Because according to him, anyone who worships Vishnu or does any type of puja is a Vaishnav, is a devotee. And that's the general understanding. So he said, we worship the Lord also. We don't disrespect the chanting of the Harinam. Actually, we also sit at home and we do bhajans. We also receive guests. We also receive Vaishnavas. So why are we not being regarded as Vaishnav? So Lahari Mahasaya says, now this is where he says a very important thing. He says, your activities are very similar to those of the Vaishnavas, but you are not actually Vaishnavas. So why is that so? He will explain. So then Devidas says, then how can one become a Vaishnava? So then Lahari Mahasaya says, see, what you are doing is a temporary thing. Unless you give up your temporary nemittic duties, which are because of a temporary reason, because now you are in a Brahman body, you're born in a Brahman family, and therefore you are following certain rituals and certain types of worship. But those are all temporary. Those are not eternal, because those are not being performed in understanding that who you really are. Right now, your conception is, I am this physical body, I am a Brahman, and that's why I'm doing this. But that's temporary, as we have read from the beginning of Jaiva Dharma. But in that understanding that I am the eternal servant of Krishna, when the same activities are performed, then that becomes Nitya Dharma. So now Devidas, when he hears this, he has another question. And he says, well, I have a doubt that I want your help to resolve. He says, I see the activities of the Vaishnavas. So, and Devidas had also read scriptures. He understood what devotion means and what are the different limbs of bhakti: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Arachanam, Sakhyam, Atma Nivedanam. So he says, you perform all of these different limbs of bhakti, but as far as I can understand, they are significantly connected with matter. Then why aren't they referred to as temporary? And so how are they connected to matter? He says, activities such as service of the deity, fasting and worship with material ingredients are all connected with gross matter. So how can they be eternal? A very good question. Right. So the deity that we are worshipping is made of stone or brass. We put clothes. Those are, in one sense, material things. We worship them with a lamp, with incense. Incense gets, finished after we burn it. The ghee lamp. So everything is gross matter, right? And we are using those things to worship a deity which is also made up of stone or brass. So he says, this all seems that this can't be eternal. How is that that what you are doing is eternal? So very important question, and many times, people are confused about it. And this is now the explanation what Lahari Mahasaya will give is so important to understand, and the difference in what Vaishnavas do and others do. Our understanding of the deity and what others think of these forms. So then Lahari Mahasaya, understanding and appreciating the confusion of his son, he said, in fact, it took me also a very long time to understand this point. I'm going to try to explain to you, so please understand it very carefully. He says there are two types of living human beings. What are those two types? Let's see if I can bring this up here. Okay. So, two types of human beings, he says. The first one, he says, are ahik. Ahik means whose interests are connected with this material world. Their only interest is how to enjoy life, how to gain more and more wealth, how to progress in their profession. And most people have their purpose of life is only this. They don't even think that there is something beyond all of this. So they don't really make any effort for anything other than accumulating material wealth, material possessions, or material status. Then there are other category of people who are called paramarthik, those who aspire for superior attainment in the future. So that means their activities, while they are also living in this world, but they have this understanding that there is something beyond this material world, which we will attain if we perform certain religious activities. So they are called paramarthik. So he says that people in this category who are paramarthik, then they are also of three types. What are these three types? The first one is called Ishanugat, meaning those, Ish means Ishwar, Anugat means those who are devotees, those who are devoted to Ishwar, the Supreme Lord. So this is Bhakti Yoga, right? So it's simple. We have been reading, this is Bhakti Yoga, so this is Ishanugat. Then the second category of people are called Gyan Nisht. Now, Gyan means knowledge, but what kind of knowledge? So it is the monastic knowledge which the goal of which is to achieve liberation. What kind of liberation? Sayujya Mukti, where one merges with the all-pervading transcendental effulgence. So this is called Gyan Yoga. Those who are Brahmavadis or the followers of the Shankaracharya's philosophy, they fall in this category of Gyan Nisht. And then he says the third category is called Siddhikami, those who covet mystic powers. So they want different kind of siddhis, anima, laghima. There's so many different kind of mystical powers they want to attain. And through those mystical powers, in fact, they also want to enjoy even further, but in a very subtle way. So this is called, these are the people who are following the process of karma yoga, or different type of ashtang yoga, different type of these activities. So he explains this further, those who are siddhikamis. He says these people are attached to the fruit of karam kanda, of their fruitive activities, and they desire to obtain supernatural powers by the performance of karma. The methods which they adopt to obtain such unearthly powers are yag, mean offering oblations, yajna, performing sacrifices, and ashtang yoga, the eightfold yoga system. They accept the existence of Ishwar, but they believe that he is subordinate to the laws of karma. So this also we had read previously in Jaiva Dharma, that those who are following this path, they think that karma is the highest thing. And we have been discussing this in Bhagavad Gita also, that many people, they conclude that what Krishna is explaining in Bhagavad Gita, the main subject is karma, because karma is the most important thing. Even Krishna himself is under the control of karma. He's bound to do those things, and he also received some reactions because of his karma. So this is their philosophy, is nothing is superior to karma. Karma has good and bad reactions, and if you do good things you will get good reactions, and therefore they want to perform things like sacrifices, offering oblations, all of this. And he says the material scientists are also included within this category. So they are by performing various experiments, by trying to their in their pursuit of knowledge also, there is a lot of sacrifice, right? People who are scientists are in fact sacrificing a lot of their time, energy to discover many things. So he says these, but that purpose of that is ultimately again a higher level of enjoyment. So he says such people, they are all called siddhi kami, those who are desiring different kind of mystical powers. Then he says the gyan-nisht, the other category is those, as we discussed, they cultivate gyan, the gyan, the impersonal monastic knowledge. They do not know or care whether Ishwar exists or not, but they fabricate an imaginary form of Ishwar anyway for the purpose of practicing sadhan. So this is also we have been discussing. And here, as you can see through one to the other chapter, the way Jaiva Dharma is written, the concepts that we have learned before, they're again summarized and explained with some more detail, right? So that way we can understand them very clearly. And the most important point that he's again explaining through all of this, that how even though external activities look the same, but in fact there is a gulf of difference between what Vaishnavas do and others do. And the difference here, he's explaining that those who are Gyan yogis, they also worship deities, right? But in their understanding, that form is imaginary. They don't really believe that there is an Ishwar. Ishwar in the sense there is someone who's a supreme person, who's a supreme controller, because in their understanding, as you know, it is all pervading oneness, and Brahman is the absolute truth, and we just merge into him upon liberation. So what their goal is to merge into that, and this by constantly engaging in the practices of bhakti directed towards the imaginary forms of Ishwar. So they also chant. They also do many of these activities that look very similar to what Vaishnavas do. But again, the goal is very different. Their goal is to merge into it. When they obtain the result of Gyan, they have no more use for the Ishwar that they have merely imagined as a means to achieve their end. Right? So therefore, they don't have that kind of devotion to those deity form. So, for example, when you are doing yoga, there is some kriya like Trata kriya. So, to strengthen your eyes, you put on a piece of paper, you make a circle, put it at a distance on the wall, and look at it. Right. That is to focus, to strengthen your eyes. When your eyes become strengthened, then you don't need to do that exercise anymore. Right? You don't need that piece of paper with a black dot on it. You will throw it in the trash. So similarly, their concept is, or just because we want to focus our mind, which is much easier when there is a form, compared to when I sit down and just try to focus my mind on something that is formless, even though my goal is to merge into that formless. But having a form helps to focus the mind. And once I have achieved that level of oneness with that supreme, then I don't need that form anymore. And in fact, this idea is so pervasive in Sanatana Dharma, so pervasive that most people, you listen to their katha, they will very, very good, beautiful katha, they will do Krishna katha, Ram katha, but this is the point where they all slip. They do not have this crystal clear that in fact the forms of Shri Krishna, Lord Ram, these are not imaginary forms. These are not the forms that formless Brahm takes and does certain activities in this world. And then he goes back into that formless. No, those forms are eternal. So he says, according to this doctrine, neither Bhagwan nor Bhakti to Bhagwan is eternal. So many of these people, therefore, will say, you only are Sita, you are only Ram. I would not take their names, but I've heard, kathas of such, very, very famous kathakars. But unfortunately, this is how Maya is so strong. And there, still, because bhakti requires surrender to a pure devotee. And without that, generally, this concept will stay. So their devotion, their bhakti has a cause. And that cause is to merge into that effulgence. And once that cause is removed, then of course they don't need that form of the deity. But the third category, those who are Ishanugat, those who are devoted to Ishwar, he says, factually speaking, they are the only ones who strive for Paramarth, the highest goal of life. A very important statement he's saying. He says, others, they are also trying to make some or they also think that they are spiritual. They are also trying to attain something which is beyond this mundane world, but that is not really Paramarth. Paramarth means, earth means wealth, and Param means the highest. So the highest wealth, which is love of Krishna, pure love of the Lord, the service, loving devotional service to him, they don't even have that conception. So he said, then in reality, it is only the devotees who strive for that highest goal of life. In their opinion, only there is one Ishwar. See, this is another very important thing. So the Vaishnavas, they clearly understand that the God is one, but he manifests in many infinite forms to relish many, many different transcendental mellows. So he is infinite, he is endless, and he manifests the jivas and the material world by his own potencies. And an important other thing that they understand is that the jivas are his eternal servants, and even after liberation, they will remain so. So all of us understand that this is what our true constitutional position is, that even after liberation, we maintain our distinct individual identity. And for us, liberation means the realization of our spiritual form. Today at the temple also we were singing this bhajan, very beautiful bhajan written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur only. Dekhite dekhite bhulibo vakabe nij sthula parichaya. And this is called Siddhi Lalsa. He's praying for achieving our eternal swarup. He says, Nij Siddha Deha, Nij Siddha Nam, Nij Rupa Swavasan. That when will that day come that I will attain my eternal form, my eternal, what my form will be, what is my seva, what is my dress. So this is, for us, this is what liberation means, that we understand what my true form is in the eternal service to the Lord. So, and the eternal dharma of the jiva is to remain eternally under the guidance of the Ishwar. And then he says another thing, important thing, for he can do nothing by his own strength. So the devotees, therefore, are very humble because they do not, take pride, or they do not develop false pride when they achieve great things. Like Swami Maharaj, he came to the West and he created a revolution. Gurudev came, did hundreds and thousands of people taking to Krishna consciousness. But because they know that everything is happening by the potency of the Lord, we are only an instrument in his hand. We on our own cannot do anything. So therefore that humility is there in a devotee. Whereas those who are jnanis, those who are siddhi kamis, they become very proud. Krishna says in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse 27, प्रकृते है क्रियमाणानि गुणैः कर्माणि सर्वश अहंकार विमूढ़ात्मा karta aham iti manyate, that everything is happening by the prakriti, by the forces of nature under the guidance of the Supreme Lord. But we, out of our false ego, think that we are the doers. But a devotee does not have this false ego. So, so then he says, but those who are Siddhi Kamis, they follow Karam Kanda, and this is what we've already explained, and they become very proud. They take pride themselves on being interested in higher attainment, but in reality, they are not pursuing the highest goal, but seeking temporary material gains, as we were discussing. So they're still what the Siddhi Kamis are looking for, only higher, some sort of a mystical power by which they can attain even more enjoyment. So in the real sense, if we very objectively see what they are pursuing, he says what they are following is also nimittic, it's not eternal. So even though they are being categorized in this paramarthic group, but he says what whatever they say about dharma is nimittic, it is not eternal. And then he gives example that the present day worships of Shiva, Durga, Sun, Ganesh, who are respectively known as Shaivites, Shaktas who worship the Durga and other potencies like that, Durga, Vaishnavi, they are all called Shaktas, worshipper of Shakti. And then Surya worshippers are called Sauras, and those who worship Ganesh are called Ganapatyas. They all follow Gyan Kand. He says they do adopt some limbs of bhakti such as Shravan and Kirtan, but only to attain mukti. But those who engage in Shravan and Kirtan without any desire for bhakti or mukti are engaged in the service of Sri Vishnu. Among these five deities, the form of Bhagwan Sri Vishnu is eternal, transcendental, and full of potencies. Those who do not accept Bhagwan as object of worship are merely worshipping temporary objects. So then he says that what you do at our home back in Shantipur, you say that you also have deities, you also do kirtan, you also do their worship. He says your worship is not paramarthic. Why? Because the deity that you have in your home, you don't accept that deity as the eternal form of the Lord. So therefore, you cannot be counted in the category of Ishanugat, those who are devoted to the Supreme Lord. He says, now I hope that you understand what is difference between Namitic and Nitya. And I hope that by this understanding, you can change your concept and now follow the Nitya Dharma. So Devidas, when he heard this, he now with every answer that he's hearing, his mind is getting clearer. But of course, there's still many doubts. And through these doubts, he's actually helping resolve many of the questions that we also have. So then he says that if we worship the deity of the Bhagwan, but if we do not accept the Vigraha as eternal, I understand that it is not the worship of an eternal object. So I've understood this. But he says, if can't one adopt a temporary means of worship to attain the eternal truth, which is ultimately distinct from any such temporary forms? What is the problem even if we do like what we are doing? According to you, that is not the eternal form of worship. But even if we do that, but our goal is to attain something eternal. So even if I'm trying to become one with Brahm, that is an eternal situation. And this is still his concept of mukti. So what is the problem? So Lahadi Mahasaya says, even if that were the case, such temporary worship cannot be called eternal dharma. Nitya dharma is the worship of the eternal Vigraha as performed in Vaishnav dharma, because there the goal is to achieve the stage of being able to render similar service eternally in the abode of the Lord. So now Devidas has a very interesting question, and a lot of people have this question. What he says Well, this deity that we've worshipped. So see, we call the deities as Sri Vigraha, right? Whereas in many temples they're called Murti, right? Big difference. Murti means a statue, because even if when you go to museums, there also they will say this is the Murti of Mahatma Gandhi. Right? Now you go to the temple and the people will say this is a Murti of Krishna, but there's a big difference in these two these two murtis. So we don't call murti of the Lord, or we don't call it statue, we call it Sri Vigraha. Vigraha means, V means special, Graha means that he has taken this very special form. The Lord can exist everywhere, he exists in every atom. So he takes this very special form so as to facilitate his devotees to be able to render loving service to him, and then that way get trained in the similar activities that are performed in the spiritual world. But his question is, this vigraha that is worshipped is made by a human being, so how can it be eternal, right? So these deities are carved by humans, and you go to Jaipur and you actually go to, there's a whole market and you can see so many hundreds of forms, marble deities are lying there. And many times these people who are even carving them, they're not even devotees, right? They belong to other communities. So he's saying that, and this is where a lot of people have the same confusion, that how is it possible, you say, oh, this is vigraha, and you spend so much, you offer them food, because many of the Hindu temples, this is not offered, and food is not offered. So he says, how can you say that this is, different? This is what the what these vigraha that is being worshipped is made by human beings, how it can be eternal? So then Lahadi Mahashaya says a very important answer he gives. He says the Vigraha worshipped by Vaishnava is not like that. Bhagwan is not like that. Bhagwan is not formless like Brahm. On the contrary, he is all powerful, concentrated embodiment of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. It is that Sachidanand Ghan Vigraha that is the worshipable deity of the Vaishnavas. Bhagwan's transcendental form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge first revealed in the pure consciousness of the jiva, and then it is reflected in the mind. Very important thing he's saying. He says the Lord, he appears in the heart of such a pure devotee, in the purified mind of the devotee. So this is the process of bhakti. As we do sadhan bhakti by our bodily limbs, then slowly as one makes progress, then Shuddha Sattva Vishesh Atma Prem Suranshu Samya Bhak, that as one performs bhakti, then he comes to the point where that love, which is rag, the concentrated love, pure love, of which the ragatmika devotees are made of, those who are the eternal associates of the Lord. They are like the sun of pure love, prema surya. So one ray, one ray of that, or just like in the sun ray, there are many particles, photons. You can ansh. So one ansh of that, prema suryanshu samebhak, that when it descends in the heart of a devotee, then he experiences bhav. So this is what Rupa Goswami is explaining, and in that bhav, he sees the form of the Lord. The external form of the deity is fashioned according to this transcendental form revealed in the mind, and by the power of Bhakti Yoga, the Sachidanand form of Bhagwan then manifests in the deity. So, what the deity is basically a reflection or manifestation of the Lord who has appeared in the heart of a pure devotee. That's why Pran Pratishtha is done. So by like Gurudev and our acharyas, they come and they will perform Pran Pratishtha because Krishna resides in their heart. So they then infuse that potency within that deity. And those who worship that deity also with love and affection, then same mood also comes in their heart. So, therefore, these deities, if they're not Pran Pratishtha is not performed, and Pran Pratishtha is, of course, there is again a ceremony, there are mantras, but more than that ritualistic aspect is this infusion. That's why it's called Pran, that this infusion of that transcendental mood, the transcendental form that that pure devotee is carrying within his heart, within that deity form. When the devotee takes darshan of the deity, that deity unites with the transcendental form of Bhagwan that the devotee sees in his heart. So Shri Gurudev, a very famous painting that Gurudev ordered to be painted by Sham, or she requested Shyamarani Didi to paint, called Seva Kunj, where Krishna is trying to have Srimati Radhika is in man, she is in a sulky mood, and he's praying to her to forgive him. And that time, he and then there is the manjris, Roop and Rati Manjri, and then Param Gurudev and Gurudev in his manjri form. So this is the painting of Seva Kunj. And Gurudev asked Shyamarani Didi to paint it. And he asked that, can you paint what is in my heart? So difficult, right? But it was only Shyamarani Didi who could do it. And how I was fortunate to be in a couple of those sittings where I saw how Gurudev was explaining his moods. And then Shyamarani Didi, with every stroke of the brush, she was chanting so many stutis and meditating, and how she would come and explain, then show to Gurudev in such intricate details. It took a very, very long time to make that painting. And then Gurudev was satisfied, and that painting, because it has manifested from the heart of Gurudev, that painting of Seva Kunj, if you go to Rup Sanatan Gaudiya Math in Vrindavan, that original painting is there on the altar. There's a special altar and worshipped just like the deities of Radha Vinod Bihari, who are also installed in the Math. So similarly, Aarti is performed, Bhoga is given. So and therefore he's saying that this is where but the deity that the Gyanis worship, however, is not like that. They think that the deity is a statue made of material elements, but that the state of Brahm is present in it while they're conducting their worship, and that it becomes a mere material statue again after they have finished their worship. So again, this is the difference. They just think this is a statue. And when I first time went to the temple, it's interesting that today it's exactly 40 years when I first time went. It was not I had gone once time to the ISKCON temple in Delhi, but that time we didn't really meet anyone. So this was when I was in the start of the second semester in IIT Delhi. So exactly 40 years ago today is when I went. I just somehow went to the temple, and one thing that struck me was there the Radha Krishna deities were not the way they look in other temples. In other Hindu temples, they put some clothes and they're not even properly dressed, but in some that clothes that they put, that dress, it's not changed for weeks and months sometimes, right? But here they were so beautifully, the dressing was done, fresh flower garlands were there. And anyways, but at that time I was following the philosophy of Vivekanand, and I did not kind of subscribe to this chanting and everything. So I was just leaving from the temple. But then one devotee came and said, there were not many, it was a very small temple that time, that the temple president wants to speak to you. So he took me inside, and that was how my life changed. A very wonderful devotee, disciple of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and very, very nice, wonderful devotee. He slowly, very patiently, over several months answered my questions. And then finally, I understood that what they were saying was actually the proper understanding of of dharma. So he says that now I hope that you understand the difference between these two concepts of the deity. See, we see that those who worship Durga and the end of Durga Puja, they immerse her in the water. Similarly, after the end of the Ganesh Puja, he is also immersed. So if the deity was considered eternal, why would they worship? Why would they uh, put them in the ocean? Now, compared to this, if you see the Vaishnavas, they give their life to save these deities. When Aurangzeb attacked Vrindavan, then the pujaris there, risking their own lives, they took all those deities towards Jaipur, and first to Kammevan and then from there to Jaipur. So Radha Govind Dev Ji, Radha Gopinath, Radha Damodar. So if they would have just thought of these are statues, we can carve them again, they would have just left them. No. And Bhakti Vallabh Tirtha Goswami Maharaj, he was once in his mutt and an earthquake came and all the devotees ran outside. But he was not to be seen. And once the shaking stopped, they were all wondering, where is Guru Maharaj? They went inside looking at his room. He was not there. So everyone was very, very scared that what happened to him. They finally searching for him went to the temple room where the deities are, and he saw that he was there holding the deities with his, arms, embracing them so that they would not fall as the ground was shaking. Everyone else ran away for their own lives. So, see, this is even though we may come to bhakti, but our understanding of realization of the deity form is not there. Therefore, we do not get that reciprocation. But here is a real acharya, Pujapad Bhakti Vallabh Tirtha Goswami Maharaj. He did not care about his life. He was, because he knew that these deities are really, and this is more of the mood of service. Of course, Krishna is eternal. But their mood of devotion towards the deity is so high that would even give up their own life. So this is the big difference. So then Devidas heard said, yes, now this all makes more sense to me. And he said one very important thing. He says, now I understand that Vaishnavas are not just fanatics who are driven by blind faith, but they actually are endowed with subtle and discriminating insight. And I understand there is a major difference between the worship of Sri Murti and the temporary worship of an imaginary form of the Lord that has been imposed on a material object. There is no difference in the external procedures of worship, but there is a vast difference in the faith of the two worshippers. This is where the big difference is. And as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, ye yatha mam prapadyante tan sathaiv bhajamiham. That whichever mood one worships me, I reciprocate in the same way. So if you worship the Krishna thinking that he is just this deity is just a material thing, then that's how Krishna will reciprocate, right? That's how your mood will also be. But those who have that mood that this is the eternal form of the Lord, this is Krishna himself, and so many, I've narrated before also, so many pastimes of Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj. Then you have examples of Sakshi Gopal, Kshir Chor Gopinath, of Srinath Ji, so many examples throughout the history of devotees, that how these deities reciprocate. Madan Mohan Ji, how Sanatan Goswami saw that he's playing with the son of Chobain, and then Krishna is defeated. And then as per the rules of the game, he has to accept the punishment, but he says, no, I'm not going to do it. And he runs into the temple and becomes a deity. And then this boy, the son of Chaubeji, comes and starts abusing Krishna. Oh, you are such a liar, you are such a bad person, like this. And Sanatan Goswami is standing there and wondering, how this deity was just playing and now became in the form of a deity. So this is all real. This is not imagination. You go to Vrindavan and devotees have such wonderful experiences. Radharaman Dev Ji. Today also you can see that some pictures, the day Radharaman Ji is really, really happy, you can see his teeth. So many pictures, so amazing. And then there are pictures where you see his lips are completely closed and you cannot see his teeth. So if this was just a statue, if it was not eternal, then how these manifestations would be? So then he said, Devidas said, I will, whatever I have heard from you, I will try to imbibe that, I will meditate on it, and if I have any questions, I will I will again come and ask from you. So that day they came back, went back to their place where they were staying, and then next day they didn't have a chance to ask any questions. And when they came, there were many devotees who were sitting in the grove of Premhans Das Babaji, and they were all chanting. And at that time, a Qazi came. Right, so it's a Muslim priest. So the Qazi came from a village called Brahman Pushkarini, and this is in the area of Navadvip, right? So this is Godrum. So in that place at that time, this is just a few years after Mahaprabhu had left. So there was great harmony between the Muslim people living there, especially those who were in the lineage of Chand Kazi, who was the recipient of Mahaprabhu's mercy, and the Vaishnavas. So there was a lot of respect towards each of them. And even today, I've seen in the past that many times when parikramas would go, there were certain mosques where the parikrama would be received with great respect. So I don't know how much of that happens today, but this was how it was, in those days. So when now this Lahari Mahashay, he had also read some Sufi literature and had also understood that some of the parts of Quran. So he had some questions from Qazi, and he posed those questions. Now, I would not go through this in detail. I would suggest everyone can read. This is basically what Bhaktivinoda Thakur, through this conversation, is trying to explain is that the concepts of Quran, if they are understood correctly by even those who study and teach Quran and by others, then you will see that those are actually not very different, not exactly as the Gaudiya Vaishnav Siddhanta, but similar in many, many points. And some of the points that he explains, that how there is also concept of a jiva, which is called ruhu. Those ruhu are living entities that are liberated, and those that are conditioned. So ruhu mujarrad and ruhu tarkibi. So like these are the words in their religion. And similarly, he says there is a concept of matter, which is jisma, and the ruhu mujarrad, which is the liberated soul, is beyond the limitations of time and space, whereas the jism, or the material body, the matter, is subordinate to time and space. So there is also concept of mundane thing and something which is beyond mundane, the soul. And then he says there is also understanding that this jiva, or the ruhu, becomes pure through the gradual development of prem. They call it ishq. And he says when someone achieves God or Khuda, then there is no influence of matter in that abode of the Lord. And there one remains as a servitor, and they use the word banda, and the Lord is the master. So therefore, there is this concept that our relationship with God is being his eternal master. He says the Quran and the literature of the Sufis explain these conclusions, but not everyone can understand them. So this is the important part. Just like even in our Vedic literature, so much is misunderstood. So much is misunderstood. Same thing, whether it's Quran or Bible, things have been misunderstood, misinterpreted. But if one sees objectively, every form of spiritual knowledge has actually come from the Vedas only. So if one Googles also the oldest religion in the world, without any conflict, nobody argues on that, is Sanatan Dharma, or the Vedic religion is the oldest. And this also only when people went into different parts and over a period of time created their own things. Just like today also we see people, even in our Vedic stream, there are new things created by some gurus, and they take a subset and then add their own interpretations and make their own system. So similarly, he says the primary teachings are the same, but not many understand us. So then he says, then what is the primary teaching of the Quran? So he says, according to Quran, the Lord's personal abode, which is the highest attainment in the spiritual world, is known as behest. It is fact that there is no formal worship there, yet life itself is worship. So, and he says the residents of that abode are immersed in transcendental bliss through seeing the Lord. So they also have the concept of an abode, just like in Christianity. Also, there's a concept of, but their concept is that of a heaven. And there's not many detail of what is there or what is the form of the Lord, how does it look like, the way it is described in Bhagavatam and other Vedic literature. So then he says that does Quran accept the Lord has a transcendental form? So Qazi says, well, Quran does not accept, it seems it does not accept that Lord has a form, but Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he spoke to Chandkazi, he explained to him that what Quran is actually saying is that Lord cannot have a material form, and that it is correct. So there also there is a misunderstanding. Quran is not saying that the Lord has no form. It says it has no material form, which is exactly what we say. It does not preclude the existence of his pure spiritual form. So like this he explains, and then he says that what is the opinions of Sufis in this regard? He says they adhere to the doctrine of Anhalak, which means I am Khuda. So their concept is same as that of Brahmwadis, Aham Brahmasmi, that I am Brahman. So then Lahadi Mahasaya says, are you a Sufi? He says, no, we are unadulterated devotees. Gaurang is our life. So this was the mood of those specifically in the lineage of Chand Kazi and others in that area, that they worship, where they saw themselves as recipients of the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and had great honor for him and those who were his followers. So like this, they had more discussion, and finally they all went back to their places. So with this, we conclude the 5th chapter of Jaiva Dharma, which was titled that Vaidhi Bhakti is also eternal. We'll stop here, see if anyone has any questions or comments. So today, I think a lot of these we had heard before, and I'm hoping these very important questions that are being discussed in Jaiva Dharma, they're helping everyone get greater clarity about what Gaudiya Siddhanta is, what true Vaishnavism is. Okay, so if no questions, then we will stop here. And then we'll start next time with the 6th chapter. That is the last chapter. This first course that we planned for Jaiva Dharma was only the first 6 chapters of the first section of Jaiva Dharma. So then the next 6th chapter is the last chapter for this course. It's a very long chapter, the longest in these 6. And we will finish over the next 4 or 5 classes. We'll finish the 6th chapter. So we'll meet next Sunday. Till then, everyone, thank you so much. Hare Krishna, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.